Today, every day, small cap investors visit Agoracom knowing this is the day to discover the world's next great company, to have their dreams come true. That's why I take to the open road, to find them, to tell their stories, to engage them, to bring them to life, because they want to connect with you from your office, your phone, your home, anywhere. Agoracom, find your dream.
Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, a production of Agoracom in which we sit down with small cap executives right after they put out important news. Product note for everyone at home, if you've been watching these videos, they're now available on podcasts. Get to Spotify, Google, Apple, or your favorite podcast sites so you can listen to these if you don't have the time to watch them. With us again, ecstatic to have him back, Bernard Tourillon, Chairman, CEO of HPQ Silicon Resources, trades on the venture exchange on the stock symbol HPQ. Now, for those of you who are new to the story, and even for those of you who've been with the store for a while, this company is constantly upgrading, moving along. The way I like to describe it now is they're now in the process of becoming a vertically integrated producer of silicon, powders, and wafers for the lithium-ion battery market. They're also still going down the path of being a diversified producer, all the way from metallurgical grade silicon all the way up to solar grade silicon. All right, and the goal there is to be the lowest cost, lowest carbon footprint producer in the world. More than just lip service, their partners are PyroGenesis Canada, a global technology leader. We don't have to go over that anymore. Global leader that's selling their products and creating products for the biggest companies in the world. Apple Solar is one of the world's leaders in renewable energy. So what's the press release that we're here to talk about? Big news. I love the headline today. I'm going to read it for you. HPQ outlines key milestones driving the company towards supplying silicon, silicon powders, and silicon wafers for the lithium-ion battery market in 2020. Bernard, welcome back, man.
Thank you.
All right, so the big news for me in this press release is, quote, the pilot plant will be in full force in Q1. What does that actually mean for the company now?
For me, that's not the biggest part of press release. The biggest part of press release is everything else that leads up to it. That's not really the biggest part. It's an important part. It's there. I think it's something that people wanted to see some clarity on it, trying to figure out there's no big issue, which there not. But I think in the rest of the press release, there is much more material that, overly excites me than just a pilot plant. Because if it was just a pilot plant, it'd just be a pilot plant.
All right. So we're going to get to that, but
Yep.
I want to get to first before we go through the products that you're going to be producing is Peter Pascali's quote. I thought was very important, where he said, "We're now in a position to refocus and accelerate the PureVap and focus on the multitude of opportunities that have come to light since our original mandate. We're confident HPQ is going to make some significant headway." Now, typically this would be, just a bunch of lip service, but it's coming from a CEO who just announced a $30 million backlog, a $20 million contract win, and another $12-13 million contract coming from the U.S. Navy. So, what's he referring to there? He's talking about multitude of opportunities, or is that the products that we're going to be covering below?
That's the product we're going to be covering below. People have to realize that HPQ has done one thing completely different from all the other Quebec-based technology resource company, actually from every other junior technology company. We've outsourced our R&D to a technology leader that has a track record of taking projects from the beginning to commercial scale. And that's been definitely shown in the last year about PyroGenesis and everything else. So that means that we are working very intertwined together. All right. Everything I'm doing in business development for the silicone business, they are aware of it. We discuss about it, and then we see how we can improve and use the PureVap as a central tool, because the PureVap is an incredible machine. Okay. And it gives us something that nobody else in the industry have. You cannot become Joe Blow silicon company tomorrow. Okay. You have two options. You have a PureVap system that can do incredibly precise system. We're the only one that can have it. Or you can go try to build yourself a traditional, 30,000 ton per year metallurgy grade silicon metal. Then what to do with it? You'll be stuck with a big $300 million investment.
So is that what gives you the multitude of opportunities? Because the pure vap is just such a great process, such a great machine that you're starting to get opportunities on different products. That, originally you're just going to be looking at solar, and now you've got. Is that why the pure vap? The pure vap is now finally starting to show its potential.
Well, I'm going to be honest. I've been aware of that potential since the beginning. That's why I've been pushing this project. It's just that the timing is serendipitous, okay? In the sense that energy storage, battery space, is now coming into full focus, full gun-ho. People understand it's a strategic industry. I was just reading the outlook. The European want to be completely free of Chinese dependent on material for batteries, right? So silicon is going to become one of those materials. So the positioning for us in the battery space is there. Everybody wants an electric car, but they want one that lasts for 1,000 kilometers, okay? The only way to reduce costs is to increase the energy density of a battery. And silicon is right now the holy grail for doing this, and we're incredibly well positioned to do it.
And it's interesting that you say that, because I read an article this morning actually where Sweden is now saying that though their citizens want to buy more electric vehicles, they want to help them meet their targets, they're concerned that they're not going to be able to make it a reality because there just isn't enough capacity on their grid. So am I right there in saying, Bernard, that if silicon can become a big part of lithium-ion, batteries, then the need to constantly recharge the batteries will drop by a factor of 10, some say. And as a result, capacity will become less and less of an issue rather than a constraint and a bottleneck that looks like it may become right now.
I wouldn't agree with your analysis. I'll just follow this. I was speaking to an industry expert not long ago. And the biggest problem that we have right now is a completely mix matching of our energy generating capacity and our energy usage. Right? That's why carbon-based fuel systems are so good. You turn on the key, you get the output of energy. You shut it off, it stops. The problems with everything that's renewable energy, hydroelectricity, and everything else, it generates the energy, and it's not the mix between the demand and the energy capacity isn't there. So it sort of like follows like two different curves. So what there needs to be to flatten out that thing, there needs to be massive energy storage capacity. So massive that, once it starts to get working, we will be building so many freaking plants just to keep up with demand. It's going to be insane. And our system is perfectly designed for the new world order that sort of came out of it, which is people are going back from, we'll delocalize all production chains, and we want to have, localized production chains. So as you rightly said at one point, our technology is sort of like the first, smelter process that's the equivalent to the laptop, to the home computers versus the big vac system, or when I started university. And that's what we have. So our timing is impeccable. Our coming online is impeccable in 2020, because this is when the industry is going to be starting to look at this. And we feel very comfortable that we can produce a material that the industry is going to want.
And let's get into these materials. You've got them in the press release, so I'm going to go in that order. By the way, are those in order of importance? Are those in order of commercialization, or are they just, or is there no particular order? Because it looks like there's some order to them.
No, there's a definite order into it. There is a definite order into it, and if you read the press release correctly, I think I'm giving enough hints of where we're going in different steps. So there is an order to it. It's not by accident that the traditional metallurgy grade silicon metal is the before last, and I talk about solar at the end. This is why I said it's not that important, the pilot plant, because that's what it represents. It's what we can do with the material we'll be producing that's really significant.
First product is these nanoscale structure silicon powders. I'm just going to call them silicon powders for lithium-ion
overly
battery.
simplification, my friend. It's an overly simplification.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
You know, because if you start talking about silicone powder, and there will be people who start Googling it, says it sells for this price there, and I saw it. It's actually fumed silica. It's actually this. It's
all right. So nanoscale structure.
Let's be very precise, okay? And I've been doing a lot of research about this. It's going to be easy for people to get confused. And somebody's going to come up and says, "I can get it cheap on Alibaba." No, it's not the same material. Okay.
So let's go into
it. Doesn't sell on Alibaba.
It utilizes. Here's the amazing thing: it's the first product on the list, but it's utilizing the Gen 2 that we thought would be scrapped, or like any Gen 2, when you replace it, you think, okay, it's going to be put on mothballs. But you say in the press release it'll be running in parallel. So how will it be running in parallel?
I said more than that in the press release. I think the exact word I'm using, well, I could go and read them. Exactly what we're saying, it's going to be modified to be used to run in parallel. So, right. and the reason why we put in parallel is so people realize it's, when we're talking starting pilot plant, we're not talking about the Gen 2. What happened, and that's part of the joint venture discussion that we're having with Pyro. And that's one of the things that Peter mentions as one of those new outlook.
Because they're a world leader in powders, right? Let's face it.
Yeah, well, they're a leader in powder. They understand this space, and they understand the incredible advantage of having complete, vertical integration on the system. This being said, there'll be more details coming along as we advance in this regard. But the brainiacs at PyroGenesis have come up with an idea where the pure VAP setting can be modified to produce those type of things. It's too technical for me. It's a few above my pay grades. I'm not a PhD on those type of things, but that's the general gist of it. So based on this is one of those high value project that Pyro and HPQ are looking into, and being able to modify the Gen 2 to start producing it is going to be great, because that's going to be running in parallel to the Gen 3, which is going to demonstrate other things.
Well, you're doing more than just looking into it, because in the press release, don't you say you want to be able to create samples for the industry?
Yeah. Right? Well, it's basically, the thing is, at this stage of the business cycle, where it is in the development, okay, it is very small quantities to even to start prototyping type of battery materials and everything else. It doesn't require massive quantity, doesn't require massive capacity. But what it does require is the capacity to be able to say, okay, we now know this work, how can we modify this moving forward? The advantage of using the Gen 2 is that eventually we could decide to say, okay, we have now demand for this type of product, and the buyers want to buy now. We could probably theoretically modify the Gen 3 or build another Gen 3 that's going to be specifically designed to do the powder. Those are all options that we're looking into. It, we'll do a cost analysis and everything else, but it's a massive market. It's going to explode. And whoever is the first to market with a product everybody wants, that can reach, as we said in the press release, which basically can make the advantage of nano powders, silicone in batteries, commercially viable, is going to have an incredible leadership position, and we think we can be in that position.
Devil's advocate. I'm going to play devil's advocate, though. I mean, how hard is it going to be to actually achieve that? Because you talk about the potential. If you do it, you'll get wide scale adoption and be first, which is great. But how daunting of a task is it to actually produce?
Actually, it's less daunting than trying to become a vertically integrated solar cell producer.
Wow!
And the reason for that is where we are in the business development cycle. Okay, if you are changing an established process material, like it is in the solar industry, okay, you need to be everything on top. If you're at the beginning of the growth cycle,
right.
People are going to basically graduate to you because you're really the only one that can do this.
Are you the only, what kind of competition
are we
is
the
there for
only
nanoscale
one?
silicon powders?
Listen, are we the only one? There's probably a few other people, but I think we're going to be the only one being able to do at the prices we're looking at.
Last question on that one, then we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Do you have an ETA when you might be sending out samples to industry
We
players?
said Q1. We said we believe
Wow,
that's
that's
not
fast, Bernard. I got to admit.
well, no, this is the point that people have realized. Okay. I've gotten the criticism that, you know, we over talk and do everything else. And basically we talk too much. And this is just a blah, blah type of press release and everything else. I got that point. So what we've done is, while we were waiting for the pilot plant, we've done a heck of a lot of work, more work than people realize. And now we're advancing on those regards. Like, you know, we have material to keep people very entertained about our development for 2020, and it's just everything is going to be coming at the same time in 2020.
Yeah, and now I'm starting to see the the crumbs that you're leaving, which is, you know, because Q1 means that you're okay. I'll leave it at that, and I've got my interpretation, but I'll save the interpretation.
Everybody's going to have their own interpretation about
Sure.
it. I have my own, which is what I wrote there. I believe that in Q1 we can have the Gen 2 operational to start producing powders for those type of markets.
Second one, porous silicon wafers for solid state lithium ion batteries. Now this one applies specifically to the battery manufacturer with whom you're under NDA right now. I'd love to know who that is. But what I found amazing was you're saying you're looking at the possibility of supplying the manufacturer with the first silicon wafer testing in the beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
How fast that relationship moving forward?
You know, fast is sort of a weird definition. I'll give an example that everybody watching can understand. You know, PyroGenesis works, it would draw strike. Okay. If you remove yourself from the day-to-day grind of the trading, it's a very fast deal that's been moving forward. The problem is that if you're looking at the clock moving on every second, it looks very, very slow.
Sure,
right?
Of course.
So this has been ongoing for a long time for discussion. I, as the one looking at the clock, find it slow. But since I haven't talked too much about it, it looks fast. That's all the difference there is. But it's the same timeline. It's the same continuing the timeline. So that's just the point. Yes, it is fast, but I knew that from the beginning that we could do this.
Is this the product that right now, for now, because obviously the lithium-ion battery space is changing different, but for now, is this the one, this porous silicon wafer for solid-state lithium-ion batteries, is this the one that has the widest potential application right now? In other words, the most commercialized product is that one right now?
That one I don't know, but in the sense that how big the commercialization can be. What I liked about this is one that fits perfectly with, you know, the pilot plan and what we're doing. The overall gist of the discussion with the battery manufacturer basically would be, it could require something like maybe half to 3/4 of our pilot plant capacity to meet their demand at the start. So though that's what attracted me to having those discussions, and through those discussions came up the fact, oh, by the way, my partner Apollon Solar has the patent to doing the wafer the other guy's looking for. So this is why it's advancing much faster and everything else. But I didn't want to be dependent on this is everything. So this is what's number two. I think the work we're doing with Pyro and the way it's structured with Pyro, I think it's going to be as big as bigger, because to be totally honest, in the battery industry, the nano silicon powder is much more perceived as a very big added advantage as opposed to the solid state silicon batteries. But for us as a company, I think it would be a great achievement to be able to reach what I say there, which is moving to something a bit more formal than the NDA.
And by the way, you know, I made not a bad assumption, but I just realized, well, not realized, but earlier today I realized I've been making an assumption that whenever I think about battery manufacturer, I strictly think about battery manufacturer for electric vehicles only. It's kind of like where my vision, what I think about. But is it safe to assume, Bernard, that battery manufacturer could also mean, you know, eventually for homes, like this battery manufacturer take their technology, put it in your home, and, you know, when it's attracting solar or off the grid or whatever the case is, it'll store it there? Or are we strictly talking electric vehicle batteries for now?
Okay. We talk, in my press release, I talk a lot about the energy storage industry. Okay. And that means all the spectrum of what you're talking about. Electric vehicle is one of the driving forces toward innovation because people want a car to run longer. But energy storage overall, big grid side energy storage. So to put that in perspective, the guys we're working with for the solid state silicon are more interested in grid side electricity storage. The guys for the powders are more interested for EV vehicle. So there's market for every one of those areas. So this is what we're looking at. But however you slice it, the market is massive. It's going to go through the roof. Okay. And you can't really become a competitor of us.
Because you can't dig silicon out of the ground at the end of the day.
You can take silicon out of the ground, but you can't make it into silicon metal. And what happens is that we produce it. The battery environment. Okay, they keep saying they don't really care about the purity of the material. They could take metallurgical. That's not really true. All of the work's been done with almost electronic or basically solar grade purity material. So as a force of habit, they say they're looking about 3N to 4N. Okay, so that's a material that's very difficult for traditional metallurgic producer to do, which is overkill for the solar manufacturer, which is in the market niche where the pure VAP works the best. So this is why, okay, it's, as I said, it's pretty serendipitous that things are falling into place just at the right time, just as a pilot plant comes online.
The next one is, and maybe this one we'll spend a little less time on, unless you think, but the high purity silicon oxide nano powder. Man, all these names are so close to each other, right?
I know, and
but
if
this
you
one's
start
really technical.
Googling silicon oxide, they'll come up with everybody's gonna say, well, it's SiO2. No, it's not SiO2. It is an Si surrounded by oxygen. It's literally what it is. It's not the same thing as SiO2, which is an atom of silicon and an atom, and it's like it's very technical. I'm starting spending enough time around PG to figure out the difference and talking to people. But if you talk to people, they know the difference what it is. What this is, it's basically right now the material being used as in a blended source with graphite to increase a little bit, just marginally, the performance of batteries. So your cell phone batteries goes from like 8 hours to 12 hours when we talk continuously. It could be those types of material. But that could be mostly also where they're willing to pay a higher price because it's sort of moving forward for the nanostructured silicon. So it's another market niche that's completely different for everything it is. But what the fun part of this is that, reading through the material from Apollon, the discussion, it's a one that could easily be made much cheaper. I'm not going to get into too much detail how it's really made.
Yeah, this one seems like it's really technical, but I want to touch on it.
But it's really technical, but this is sort of like the small part of the market. It's $1 billion addressable market jumping up by insane numbers. Okay, so addressable markets are very big.
How far are you away from the, let's ask the last, how far are you away from being able to know that you can produce high purity silicon oxide nanopowders?
It's going to be an offshoot of when we're going to be working on the wafers. So it's, as we get one, we get the other. So it's like part of the thing we're working with Apollon.
The next one, I call it, this is the one that's going to pay the bills. This is standard purity silicon.
No, it's not the one that's going to pay the bill. It's not the one that's going to pay the bill. It's the one that gives us an incredible competitive advantage. Okay.
Okay.
It's the one that's going to allow us to go get the
purity.
Yeah, it's the one that's going to allow us to go get the incredibly big profit margin. Okay. Because you'll hear lots of talk about,
right? Like this one's available now. This one's high profit margins, and you can almost go after this now.
No, George, you're confusing things. The point we're talking about standard silicon metal, right? Okay. Standard silicon metal is the feedstock for everybody else. We're going to control the feedstock. We control the purity. That gives us a technical advantage over everybody else. But it's our ability to produce high value, small quantity, high value material that really is going to bring up the green to us. Okay. And this is what I wrote in it. So I get a lot of a lot of people contacting me about the process, but they're usually quartz people that realize they get jet,
Yeah, your quote is market participants with significant quartz assets have shown a keen interest in our process.
Yeah, it's they're all coming back. I want to buy your pure VAP. Says no, not for sale. It's like, I don't care. It's like, you guys go through the pain we've been through. Like everybody has everybody has a quartz deposit. They got 5 cents a kilogram. 5 cents a kilogram. You need 15 cents a kilogram. I'm talking about selling a material. I think long-term commercial is going to be $80 to $100 a kilogram. Okay. But right now it's selling up to $30,000 a kilogram. 5 cents. You do understand where we have a better leeway than they do.
Last one is solar.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, hold on. Let me go back to that one. Mm-hmm. So, we got an idea of what the market participants are there. Mm-hmm. How soon do you see anything evolving from that line specifically?
I think if it comes out of that line, okay, it will be somebody trying to buy us out. To be totally honest, yes. I'll just give you an example. Walker decided to control their cost to do solar grade, material, polysilicon. They started to go buy a metallurgy grade silicon metal manufacturer. I think the interest from this group is going to be sort of a life and death interest for them and try to come after us. That's why I'm not that focused about that market, but much more about the other ultra high end. So if they want to come after me, they're going to have to pay a lot because of everything else. I have the marginal profit or everything else. But that's more my thinking out of this.
Is that the market that also de-risks everything because you know that you can sell at a better price and still get good margins? Is that
yeah, but I
de-risk the whole process here?
We've de-risked it so much. It's like, remember, okay, when the stock was trading at 30 cents, we had the biggest market cap. We were shooting for one product, one thing. If we failed that one, it didn't work. Now we have two very solid business lines that are offtake of our pure VAP technology. I think it's a very good, and then the third one is solar, as we say to it. But
and that's why I want to go in solar. So that seems like solar was the one coming out of the gates, but and you're still gunning for it, mm-hmm. but it's moved so fast that your original assumptions aren't there anymore. But you think if you can get to 4N and less than 1% of the boron, I believe, mm-hmm. You'll have a market product. How far off are you from being?
That's not what I said.
Okay.
What we say is if we can reach that goal with the pure VAP, then we can develop a metallurgic UMG route, okay, to make competitive solar grade silicon metal. That's always been what we said. Then again, if we come up and we make 5N, we half a boron, then we'll be closer to being able to make solar. And then because to be totally honest, there exists multiple of processes out there to remove at least 2 ends and everything else. Then the problem really gets, you have to make the material all the way to a solar cell, show your solar efficiency and everything else to be. So the process to get the material approved, okay, seems to be like 3 to 4 times the length that it is for the battery space.
So how far off are you, do you think, on solar from delivering samples, having NDA discussions like you already are having now for the battery market?
I don't know. It's not that big of a question mark for me. And I think we've wrote it pretty correctly. I think the other markets, the other 5 things before or 4 things before are much more important than that one. But it could change because what our process allows, as I said before, is smaller scale, more local, more vertically integrated process. And that may become, and it's a much greener process than anything else. So we'll have the greener energy. So maybe in the next 2-3 years, as the complete carbon count of a solar system, okay, this is where we're having sort of disadvantage. Our process is the greenest there is out there. We're comparing generating 8 grams of CO2 versus 141 in China. Okay, but the governments in North America, well, in Europe they do pay attention to this, but in North America they don't. In Canada they don't. So for them it's called carbon leakage. They don't care. So we don't have the same incentive. It's like we talked about this. Everybody says it's great. Nobody was really willing to throw a lot of money doing for the R&D from the government part. The battery space, we just started coming into it, and they're running after us. So it's like, oh, okay. So,
They're running after you. Okay, I like that. We're getting somewhere with you. They're running after you.
It's basically, trust me, I've worked pretty hard at financing the pilot plant, the solar thing. And somehow in the energy storage market, you get a lot of mileage. I was there in a presentation not long ago. Somebody was talking, this is the only thing they're investing. And one of the key points that we're saying they're investing, they're looking for project in tier 1 economy, which is where Canada fits in.
And I guess that's where, going back to Peter Pascali's quote, reading it again, it really starts, you really start to see where you guys are going. We're now in position to refocus and accelerate the PureVap initiative, focus on the multitude of opportunities that have come to light since defining our original mandate. As a result, we're confident that HPQ is going to make some significant headway over the coming months. That pretty much says it all. If we said that, we did talk about that at the beginning, but given what you've said, since then, it makes sense to revisit it and look at it in a different light. So, last word to you, Bernard. You start off the year looking at solar. You're ending off the year with multiple products going after the lithium-ion battery market. How do you feel about how 2019 went, and how much you look forward to 2020?
There's a different way to look at it. Some shareholders will say, if you look at the share price, it sucks. And if I look at it on the long-term potential of what we've developed, I think it was a great year because there's a lot of things that fell into place, a lot of opportunities that appear that were not there in 2018, even after we announced the government financing. So I think 2018 was a transitional year for us in the sense that the way to generate value is becoming clear. I know that for a lot of people, these sounds like just words, but that's the way it is. It's like we build a pilot plant and we build a product that has to have an interest, you generate a value. In the mining sector, you do a series of drilling holes and you start calculating resources, then you come up with a PEA and everything else. In our line of business, which is more the industrial mineral, we've chosen a very different tactical approach, which is to focus much more onto the process to generate the high revenue value. We think it's the right way to do. And I think it's going to pay off handsomely to all shareholders that have the vision and the patience to last long.
Well, from the sounds of Bernard, the first couple of quarters, just from this press release, look like they're going to tell us a lot, right? So, do we have a lot to look forward to, shareholders in Q1, especially, it sounds like, and even Q2?
Yeah, well, if you take a look, I think we've, as I said, I've issued 18 and 19 press releases. I think what's going to become more interesting, I think what's going to change in 2020 versus, 2019 is that, with the Gen 2 operational to do powders, there's going to be more technical stuff coming along as opposed to designing, financing, getting things moving. The pilot plant operational, the plaquettes, the solar wafers being done. So there's going to be more what looks like tangible success, but it's like when you're building a house. When you're building a foundation, it doesn't look like it just looks like a hole in the ground. But eventually the building comes out and then suddenly you realize, oh, it's really moving well and things are advancing faster. But You have to make sure you have a solid foundation. And I think that's what 2018 was the year where we got the government money too. So we got the Quebec government. And I think people forgot that at a significant premium to market. So these guys,
Sure.
yeah, premium to market, and that hasn't changed. And I think people forget that the pilot plant phase, okay, is fully financed. So it's not the same thing as it was before. So that was financed in 2018. We got no credit from the market for it. It was done 2018. 2018, we've done a lot of work to get 2020 to where it's going to be, which is we're going back to working and coming up with operational results. We'll have a pilot plant. We'll have people that sign NDAs that want to come and visit it. We'll be able to. I think it's a very important point to go talk to investors.
On that note, Bernard, thanks for joining us again. As always, fantastic information, and there's always a chance we'll have you back on, because I never know between you and Peter when something happens, and when something does, it happens pretty quick. But in case we don't speak to you before the end of the year on one more interview, then congratulations on the year that 2019 was. Congratulations to you and your team, and all the best in 2020, because we're definitely going to be watching. This is the year.
Thanks.
You've been watching Bernard Tourillon, or maybe listening to Bernard Tourillon, Chairman, CEO of HPQ Silicon Resources. The company trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the stock symbol HPQ. If you love the renewable batteries, the renewable energy space, if you love the lithium-ion battery space, if you love electric vehicles, then you owe it to yourself to do your due diligence on HPQ Silicon, because not only do they have some amazing things going on, but they've got two great partners to back, world-class partners to back it up. So, this isn't just another small cap company throwing out lip service about what it think it may do someday if everything aligns itself. I think 2019 was a fantastic year. So get to Agoracom, do your due diligence there, and then get over to the HPQ site, do some more due diligence, and then come back to Agoracom, where Bernard will answer your questions right in the forum. So you post those questions, Bernard will answer them, and I can't think of a better way to do due diligence. Thanks for joining, everybody. Thanks for watching, or if you're on podcast, thanks for listening. Have a fantastic day. See you next time.